Welcome to the Commonwealth Policy Center's Candidate Forum. I'm Richard Nelson, your host. Kentucky's primary election is on May the 21st, and there are several choices that voters will have on the ballot, including a primary election for State Senate District 1. The incumbent is State Senator Jason Howell, and a Republican challenger is vying for that seat, Lynn Bechler, who is a former state representative for Kentucky's 4th District, is vying. Lynn, welcome to the program.
Well, thank you, Richard. I appreciate the invitation. It's great to be here.
So, Lynn, you served 5 terms in the Kentucky State House from 2012 to 2022. Why are you running again? That's the big question, right? You of course, you were redistricted when after the 2020 census. We had to redraw the lines.
Right.
There was a population shift from the western part of the state and the eastern part of the state. Both parts lost population. You were put into the district with State Representative Jim Gooch in the 2022 election, and you came up on the short end. So why are you running again?
That is a very good question, and I've been asked that a number of times. I'm running again because things just didn't go the way that I thought with the State Senate District 1. When I lost the 2022 election, I was comfortable that after 10 years, I was done with politics as an active candidate. I felt I had done some good. I got some things done that I wanted to complete. Not everything, of course. I don't think anyone does. But just taking a look at what was happening in the district, the views of my opponent, the current incumbent, and the number of phone calls that I got asking me to run finally pushed me over after, of course, talking to my wife, praying about it, etc. I found it very interesting that when I first got into the political game, if you will call it a game, I was never a believer that people ran because they were asked to run. I thought that was just political talk. I said, right, yeah, sure you were asked. Well, as it turned out, I had to change my views because when I ran for office as a representative, the same thing happened, and it happened here too. So people who get involved and engage in politics who aren't actually candidates can make a difference.
They can. So the 1st Senate District is a large district. It covers from the river county of Fulton, which is right on the Mississippi River, the furthest west county in Kentucky. So it's Fulton, Hickman, Graves, Callaway, Trigg, Lyon, and Crittenden. You're in Crittenden. You're on the edge of that district. A lot of ground to cover, Lynn.
Right.
I don't know how many square miles, but it is a pretty significant district. What are you doing? Are you getting out there all the way to Fulton County and Hickman County, the far western part of the area?
I've been to every county in the district, and I intend to be there up to the primary. And hopefully, after the primary, when I win the election, I'll be in all of them too. It's an interesting district in that it borders 3 states, Illinois, Missouri, and Tennessee. So I'm not sure if there are other districts in the state that do that, but I found that very interesting. It is, like you, I haven't gone out and taken a look at the square miles. I'm kind of afraid to. I'm putting so many miles on the car as it is. Yeah. So I've got over 183,000 on one, and I've got about 213 on the other one. So, I'll let you know at the end of the time if the cars hold up.
Okay. I'm sure we'll hear about it if you have a breakdown. Lynn, your background is interesting. You have a background in aerospace engineering.
Yes.
You worked at IBM as an executive, I believe. And then, of course, in the state legislature. You were there for 10 years. Tell us how your background might help you if you're elected to the State Senate District, representing the 1st District.
Well, I think my background helps because it has made me data-driven. There are too many times that decisions are made in the General Assembly that, in my view, are strictly reactive emotionally. It's not good just do something because it feels good. In my mind, you have to really study and take an issue and break it apart and find out what the good parts are, what the bad parts are. One of the things that I've always done is read every bill before I vote on it. I think that the decisions I've made and the fact that I do read every bill have played an important part with me in the General Assembly. I've had a number of state representatives come up to me while I was in the House and say, well, you know, what is this really and how are you going to vote on it? Doesn't mean that they always agreed with me or voted the same way I did, but I was pleased that people would come up and ask me, you know, how I felt about something. As part of my degree, as you mentioned, aerospace engineering, but I also have a second major in math, and I think those two together, along with I'm a certified manufacturing engineer, or I was until I retired. I think all of that drives me toward making data decisions.
And using the correct information, using data, relevant data, is important to making good public policy, isn't it?
I believe so, yes.
So Lynn, I think of the state legislature right now in Kentucky is comprised of Republicans. Supermajorities in the House, 80 out of 100 seats are occupied by Republicans. In the Senate, 31 out of the 38 seats are occupied by Republicans. And yet there are policies that are pushed forward that don't always represent Republican principles. And I think, for example, there was a move to fund pre-K, universal pre-K schooling. There are a number of other bills and efforts that expand government in some ways. Generally, Republicans are for smaller government and for less taxes. Are those two principles, smaller government and less taxes, are those defining principles of who you are and of your candidacy?
They are. The caveat I will bring forth is that government is necessary, and there are times when the government has to come in and take a stand. For example, during the COVID crisis, we all know in retrospect how masking children in school has just created a number of problems. They couldn't learn to communicate properly. The younger children, older, it has just led, in my mind, to bigger problems, mental health, etc. While I was in the House, I sponsored legislation and was able to get it through the House that would give parents the option of whether or not to have their children wear a mask when they go to school and whether or not to get the COVID shot. I refuse to call it a vaccination because, in my mind, a vaccination is supposed to keep a person from getting some disease. And as we can see, there are no shots that have been developed yet that would keep someone from getting COVID. That and the fact that how it was developed. So, as I mentioned, I was able to get that through the House of Representatives, but it died in the Senate. And my opponent, Senator Howell, would not help me at all in trying to get that brought to committee or ultimately on the floor of the House. So I found that very, very disappointing.
On the other side of the COVID debate in public schools, as students were doing remote learning, parents were more involved. They could see what their children were being taught. They could look over the shoulder of their child and see the curriculum and the lessons that were being taught. And to the surprise of many parents, they learned that there were things that were controversial, maybe inappropriate. Since then, we have seen a number of parents choose to either homeschool or send their kids to private school. There was a decrease of 10% in public school enrollment after the COVID shutdown was done. And we're still seeing that, Lynn, where parents are learning of objectionable things in the public schools,
Right.
whether it's books in the public school library or gender ideology being taught in the schools. And parents are putting the brakes on, and often they're saying, no, not in our school, which, by the way, has led to a couple of different bills. I think of, we'll start with Senate Bill 150. Senate Bill 150 was enacted last year, and it prohibited the teaching of gender ideology in K through 12, all of public schools. It prohibited transgender students from using bathrooms of the opposite biological sex. It also prohibited gender transitions, whether it's hormone therapy or surgery. It stopped that in the Commonwealth of Kentucky. Let's go with this. Where would you have voted if you were in the legislature when it came to Senate Bill 150?
I would have voted the way the bill said. I think that the gender alteration, mutilation surgeries are abominable. I just can't see that. You know, the two sexes were created by God. We have men and we have women, or I suppose I should say male and female, because it's not just at the adults. So I believe strongly that there should be curbs on it, and that's one of the areas that I mentioned where government has to be involved. We just can't. You know, I tend to be libertarian as well, but I do believe that the government has to take a certain stand to keep some of the I'll just call them out of the mainstream views to become, normalized.
Another fallout, I think, that happened after the COVID shutdowns in the public school was about what parents were finding in the public school libraries. There was a situation in Jefferson County middle schools where there were homosexual books promoting homosexuality with young people, very graphic, erotic. A mother of 4 children in that school district objected, talked to the principal, talked to the school board, and tried to get that removed, to no avail. There was a bill proposed by your opponent, Jason Howell, Senate Bill 5, 2 sessions ago, that gave recourse for parents. If there is objectionable material, it gave them recourse to, if the school board didn't act, if the school principal didn't act, parents could, there was a process put in place for them to object. Is that something that you would have been in favor of?
I would have been in favor of that, yeah, definitely. I think that it's interesting that he proposed that bill because in the past he has been very vocal about letting the school boards do what they want. I'm not sure what changed in his mind because he voted against the bill that would have outlawed the gender surgeries.
Okay. Of course, that is still a big area of dispute in the public schools. What's appropriate to be taught? Who should have input on curriculum? Should it be the school board or should it be the parents or both? What's your view, Lynn, when it comes to appropriate curriculum in the public schools and appropriate content? Who should have more input? I'll put it to you this way, the school board or the parents?
I'm not sure it's a one or the other. I believe that parents and the school board can work jointly to come up with a reasonable curriculum, acceptable books, acceptable slides, who should be invited to speak. I know that I haven't seen it too much in Kentucky, but conservative speakers have been invited to speak and have been harassed and not been able to complete their sentences or their work. So I think that we definitely need to take a look at that too.
Do you see in your school districts, again, you have 7 counties in the 1st Senate District, are you seeing these battles come up of inappropriate books in the library or inappropriate curriculum?
Not really. They tend to be pretty mainstream, if you will.
Okay, very good. Let's look at some other legislation that came up because of some of the controversy during the COVID shutdown, school choice. Parents have demanded a choice. Upwards of 86% of Kentuckians favor options for parents of where to send their kids to school. A bill did pass the state legislature, House Bill 2, that would allow for some kind of school choice to come into the Commonwealth. This came from, in part, the Supreme Court ruling last year that said that the Kentucky Constitution needs to be amended in order for school choice to come into play here. Where do you stand on school choice?
I'm for school choice. I believe that the money that we give for educating our children should follow the student, and that is whether or not the student's going to a private school or home school or chooses to stay in the public school. Charter schools, everything should be on the table. And I believe, I know you hear the argument that, well, we're going to take away money from public schools. Well, I'm a firm believer that competition drives better results. And we have good teachers in Kentucky. So I am convinced that should this amendment pass and school choice become a reality, that the schools will be forced to improve what they offer and make the citizens in their district happy with what is going on.
Very good. Well, that question will be on the ballot this November, and it's Amendment number 2, and it would allow for school choice to come into the Commonwealth of Kentucky.
Kentucky is at a crossroads. We can choose to give in to the radical left, or we can choose to engage the culture in a God-honoring way.
I started the Commonwealth Policy Center because I believe that Christians have a responsibility to influence government and society to the glory of God. While the Commonwealth Policy Center's made a significant impact, our work isn't finished. If you'd like to join our movement working for timeless values, then head to our website.
To learn more, go to commonwealthpolicycenter.org.
If you're just tuning in, you are watching CPC's Candidate Forum. I'm with former State Representative Lynn Bechler, who is vying for a position, State Senate District 1. He's challenging Jason Howell, the incumbent. Lynn, that primary election is just around the corner, just a few weeks off. Let's talk about your accomplishments when you were in the State House. Again, you served for 10 years there. And I've got a couple of social issues here that I pulled off of your website. You are pro-life, correct? And you voted for a number of pro-life bills. I think it was probably close to a dozen pro-life bills. But one of those bills was the 2019 trigger bill. It banned abortion if Roe v. Wade was ever overturned. And of course, it was overturned in 2022. Was that one of your votes that you were proud of as a pro-life candidate?
Absolutely. I was a co-sponsor of the bill, and I have an issue with calling abortion women's health because it is more than women's health. We have to consider that there are two people who are affected with abortion. And by just referring to it as women's health, what we're doing is ignoring the life of the unborn child.
Yeah, and you have sponsored other pro-life bills as well, but the 2019 trigger bill was the one that essentially outlawed abortion centers from opening in the Commonwealth of Kentucky. We've been abortion-free for, I think, about 15 months now. Another bill that you tout on your website, something you were proud of, is the Fairness in Women's Sports Act that kept biological boys off of girls' sports teams. That was passed in the legislature in 2022, and then also eliminating the state income tax. That was another bill that that went into effect a few years ago when you were in the House. What other bills am I missing here that you were proud of when you were serving in the state legislature?
I, in reality, was probably most proud of my work behind the scenes. Sometimes getting out and jumping in front of a camera tends to give you some celebrity status, but it really doesn't doesn't help what's going on. One of the things that I did was, it was either my first or second term, I think it was my first term, I put an amendment on a Democrat bill, and Republicans had never been successful in amending a Democrat bill. This particular one mandated that children get the HPV, the human papillomavirus vaccine, whether it was male or female, and it would require the students to have it, and it gave parents, the only way it could get out is it gave parents the opt-out ability. I amended or proposed an amendment that would give parents not an opt-out, but they'd have to opt in before that would take effect. And there was much controversy in the House over that by the sponsor and other people. But ultimately, the amendment passed. And I was told later that there was nobody in the Republicans legislature at the time who could ever remember an amendment from a Republican being put on a Democrat bill. So I think that was pretty good.
Okay.
I like that.
And of course, you came into the state legislature in 2012 when Greg Stumbo,
Yes.
Democratic Speaker of the House, and Democrats had a pretty big majority at that time. I think that they had probably a supermajority, maybe 60 seats or close to it.
Close to it, yeah.
But then after 2012, Republicans chipped away. Of course, the 2012 election chipped away, 2014, and then 2016 is when Republicans flipped the House.
Correct.
When, for the first time in 100 years, you had control of the House. What was it like being there when Republicans took control of the House?
There was quite a bit of excitement, as you might guess. It takes a while to learn to govern as a majority, as opposed to trying to change things when you are in the minority. But it was a great feeling. Apparently, Republicans have done a pretty good job because, as you mentioned, we keep growing the number in there. And with 80 in the House, that's pretty dramatic when you consider where we came from.
Pretty dramatic, and on a number of fronts, Kentucky has shifted to the right, not just by virtue of who's holding office, but the policies. They are pro-life, pro-family, and they're fiscally conservative policies. We have become a right-to-work state. Prevailing wage has been repealed. The state income tax is on track of being phased out. It was at 6% when you came in. Right now it's at 3.5%, and it's scheduled to go down to 3%, I believe, next year in 2025. So we've seen a number of conservative policies enacted. What other policies would you like to see in place? What would you do if you were elected to the state Senate District 1?
What, if you'll allow me, I'd like to talk a little bit about the state income tax first. Yeah. I was on the Appropriation and Finance Committee, and I was one of the co-sponsors in a big push for eliminating the state income tax. And of course, with the elimination of the state income tax, ultimately, the money coming into the state has to be received from a different manner. Now, I happen to think that we tax too much, but in order to bring the income tax down, as you well know, we expanded the base of what can be taxed from a sales tax perspective. And I know some people look at that as saying, oh, you're voting to increase taxes. And I disagree with that. I take a look at how people do things, and I argue that drug dealers do not pay income tax. However, drug dealers buy stuff. And that's one way, in my mind, that we can, begin to put a minor dent, if you will, into a drug dealer's income stream. So
wait, are you suggesting that we should tax drugs, legalize it and tax? What are you suggesting?
No, I'm not suggesting that at all. When I say drugs dealers, I'm talking about the illegal drugs that are the dealers sell on the street. And my point is that the drug dealers take that money They do not pay an income tax on that. However, they buy things. In no way am I suggesting that we should tax legal drugs.
Very good. And of course, we've seen where the state of Oregon, which experimented with drug legalization, they've had it as a public policy for a handful of years, and they just repealed that because they've seen the disaster that drug legalization has on a community where there's open drug use in the streets and people overdosing regularly, and leads to homelessness and other problems as well. But when it comes to using hard drugs, that's probably the limit. You see that where certain things that we allow openly in society has such a negative impact that it undercuts the ability of civilization, if you will.
Absolutely, absolutely. So, it's tough. One of the things that you have to do in the General Assembly is to make a decision, and that's not always easy.
Yeah, it's not. Lynn, you say on your website that you are pro-Second Amendment. How important is this issue to your district?
It's very important to my district, and I would argue that it's probably very important to the majority of Kentuckians. There are certainly some areas where it is not a good thing in people's minds, but I'm in favor of it, and I think it is very, very good for the state. I've been endorsed regularly by the NRA, and I'm proud of that endorsement. I wear that endorsement proudly.
Okay. Another one of your topics on your website is public safety. What does this mean to you and to your district?
Well, I'd like to put public safety right now into the area of illegal immigration. Okay. I think that we need to be able to have laws that combat illegal immigration. The federal law calls it illegal aliens, and that's what the people coming in are. They've broken the law to get into our country and our state. I think we need to make sure that we do not allow any sanctuary cities or sanctuary school policies to be in place. I think we need a law that would require police to honor an ICE detainer. Mm-hmm. So I think that we keep hearing that illegal immigration is now at every state, and I believe that, and I think we need to address it.
Very good. Lynn, we are just about out of time for this program. Do you want to tell the voters what you would do if you were elected to serve as the state first district state senator for West Kentucky?
I would be responsive to all the citizens. One of the complaints that I've heard about my opponent is that he doesn't respond. He just shows up periodically, and I respond. I answer phone calls. I get back to people whether or not they agree with the position that I have. Hopefully more of them agree than disagree. I think that we talked earlier about DEI, and I heard somebody call that once "didn't earn it," and I think that that's a pretty good way to describe it. So I will be responsive. I will vote my conscience at all times. If it comes down to an issue where it appears that the majority of the people in the district think something is good, and I'm not necessarily in favor of it personally, as long as it does not impact my moral compass, then I will definitely vote that way.
Very good. Lynn Bechler is running for the 1st Senate District in Kentucky. Lynn, how can people get a hold of you if they want to find more information?
You can go to my website, which is bechlerforsenate.com. That's BECHLER for senate.com. Or you can go on my Facebook page, Bechler, candidate for state senate.
Very good. And again, thank you for joining us on the Commonwealth Policy Center's Candidate Forum. Don't forget to vote. Tuesday, May the 21st is the primary, and Lynn will be on the ballot along with several other candidates running for office as well. Thank you, and may God bless you.